Welcome back to Daybreak. This is, as I said earlier, sets the agenda for you, and this is the time that we want to set the agenda in terms of the curriculum rollout. That is the competency-based curriculum, what you may know of as 26683, the curriculum that now is on its day 3 of national rollout. This is no longer a pilot, but a proper rollout. We're joined by Dr. Julius Juan, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Maybe just begin from the start, and that is 3 days. Okay, you may not have observed today, but at least you saw last week when the schools reopened on Thursday, day 1 and 2. What can you say about the progress so far? Just 2 days.
I think so far is good. One, because this is the same curriculum that the teachers, handled last year.
Right.
So it is not like they're handling for the first time. During the pilot last year from grade 1 to grade 2, the same teachers handle the same content, they handle the same the same curriculum. So I think so far so good, and teachers are very intelligent people. Let us not underrate their intelligence to interpret what they are supposed to do. Right,
and I want to look at some of the things that have been said previously by the Ministry of Education alongside the Institute. For instance, the Cabinet Secretary last week said that 21,627 public primary schools had received the four volumes of the competency-based curriculum.
Designs.
And yes, the curriculum designs, yes. And the instructions were to the county directors of education to ensure that no school doesn't have a design. When I look at the numbers, I see that in 2018 there were 20,427 public institutions that such KCPE, but there were others that are private, which is 6,730. I would imagine that there are more schools which are private that are running the new curriculum. How have you ensured that even them, they have these curriculum designs?
Incidentally, when we printed the designs and when they were being distributed to schools, the private schools through the Private Schools Association were also acquiring the designs.
At a fee?
At a production fee, actually. Part of the negotiation is that they get it at a production fee, so that all schools have curriculum designs, because without curriculum designs, you cannot implement a curriculum. So that was the first thing we initiated towards the end of 2017, as we were starting 2018, so that curriculum designs.
Right.
Because with curriculum designs and the way that we have done them this time, teachers are able to proceed with the implementation. Yes.
I don't know how many teachers are teaching the early childhood levels of education from PP1 to grade 3. But can you confidently say that every teacher that is with learners at those levels has been trained on the new curriculum?
I think I need to explain more about the training of the new curriculum. Normally, you'll find in a lot of schools, from grade 1 to grade 3, you will have a maximum of about 3 teachers. That is if a school is very lucky. In most cases, you'll find that a school has 1 teacher who oscillates between grade 1 to grade 3. Some schools have 2 teachers. Now, in total, we have trained about 170,000 curriculum implementers. Now, I just 170,000.
Sorry, come again?
170,000 curriculum implementers. Now, I call them curriculum implementers because within that, we also have the curriculum support officers, who are the TSC employees at the zonal level. Now, our training is cascade. You start at the national level, then we have the trainer of trainers, then we have the training of curriculum support officers, and then we train the teachers. Now, coming to the actual training of the teachers, one thing that I wanted to explain as a teacher, when you go to train as a teacher, you are trained on various methods of teaching.
Right.
One of them, of course, is the lecture method. You will have question and answer. You will have discussions. You will be engaging learners in activities, etc., etc. Now, when you go to the school, you will find that probably at any given time, one methodology, or what we call pedagogy, is more dominant than the other. Now, in the existing education system, we have been spending more time or concentrating a little more on lecture method, where the teacher just walks into class and gives information, and probably asks a few questions, and then, because the teacher has to finish the syllabus. Now, what we are telling the teachers is that let us move the dichotomy, let us try to use more of activities, it doesn't mean they're still not going to use of these other methods. So when we talk of training of teachers, we are not training teachers on something they don't know. We are just trying to inform them to put more emphasis on one methodology against the other, or as opposed to the other. So when we talk of how well do you think the teachers are trained, these teachers were already trained during their college days.
Right.
But we are trying to reorient them to use one method more than the other.
Okay.
So I think that is why I'm comfortable with the kind of training that teachers have been given.
Okay, all right. And I want us to look at some of the facts that we have from the graphics that we have. And for instance, that or rather, it became apparent when the Cabinet Secretary was speaking last week and said that the new curriculum for grade 1 up to 3, there will be 7 lessons per day. Each lesson is going to last 30 minutes.
Yes.
And then for pre-primary 1 and 2, there will be 5 lessons, and each lesson will last 30 minutes.
Yes.
I just want to look at some of the activities that they'll be learning. You're calling them not subjects now, you're just calling them activities, and that is the learners for grade 1 up to 3. If you can have that slide that talks about, there will be literacy activities, there will be Kiswahili language or the Kenya Sign Language, there will be the English language activities, mathematical activities, environmental activities, hygiene and nutrition activities, there will be religious activities, movement and creative activities, as well as pastoral program of instruction. When you look at this, just before you carry on with the other slide, when you look at this, there are some people who have been, what are these activities? How exactly, as a curriculum developer, do you intend that this to be implemented in training the young children? Okay,
thank you very much. I think that is very exciting. That's exactly what I've been talking about. That when the teacher is being trained on how to implement or how to teach, they have activities, they have discussions, they have question and answer, they have lecture. So the reason why we are calling them activities is to focus on that particular methodology of teaching. Because the problem we have had as a country is that we have tended to teach the learner at very early ages on cognitive thinking. Children learn better when they play. Children enjoy school when they play. And this is, by the way, a trend across the world. So when we are talking of this, it's not that we are doing anything out of the ordinary. Even when you look at the conception of our education, the word go, children at that age were not intended to be put down on very intense cognitive engagement. That changes and that spoils the attitude for learning. Children learn as they play. So the reason why we are calling them activities is also to draw the attention of the teacher that as much as you're going to that class, ensure that your approach is more activity-based. So that is why we call them activities. And that is the trend across the world. Actually, this is not something new. This is something that, you go to any other country, any jurisdiction in education at that lower level. And these are based on theories. These are based on the cognitive development of learners and how learners are engaged at that level. So it is not something that just comes from the blues.
Of course, the parents of these children who are at this level, most of them actually people who went through the 844 system. And so they are wondering, because the understanding is that you will summative examinations, and instead you have the progressive assessments. Just tell us, when you look at this, when you train them on these activities, how then do you assess them?
Now, there's something we call portfolio. Now, as these children go to school, the teacher will be building a portfolio on every learner. As they play, teachers are trained to identify their skills, their emotional engagement, so that at every level, how they interact with others, as they move on, a teacher should be able to identify the strengths of each learner, areas that need to be improved, and as you build on that at the end of it all, you can produce a summary on specific areas of a child growth, which you then give to the learner. But again, let me maybe correct something. We are not necessarily, in the long run, doing away with summative evaluation. We are going to have a balance of formative and summative. In fact, I'll give you an example in Nigeria and Ghana. They have, I think, 40% formative and 60% summative. So I think there has been a perception that we are going to do away with the exams and everything cuts. No, it is a balance of the two. But we want teachers to build portfolios of learners, to have a file that runs on every learner, so that by the time a child maybe goes through 6 years, you can comment very strongly about them based on going through, so that you don't have a situation where a learner stays in school for 8 years, then within about 3 hours, not that it is outrageously long, because it's also a method that has been used, then we use that to judge them.
Okay.
And then as we go along that, we also try to impress on learners, none of them is stupid. That none of them is so foolish that there's nothing that they can do in this world.
Okay.
You give them and make them understand that if Sam Kituku is strong in this, then me, I'm strong in this. We are different, but we are not. Okay. So that if a child gets a C or a C minus, like what we saw in KCSE, a child does not go and commit suicide, that they have failed. You know, those are the kind of things we are trying to deal with.
Okay.
So that we have continuous assessment, but we'll have summative examination. Although, I better add here, we have assessment in between, national assessments. For example, if you reach grade 3 or grade 6, you have a national assessment to identify as a country areas of competencies and skills that we have not acquired very well at a given grade, so that as they go to the next grade, then teachers can put emphasis. And those
assessments will they be conducted on individual learners, all of them?
That will be conducted by NEC. And it will be sample. You know, like when you look at the PACE assessment that takes place across the world, when you do sampling, you know, research, you do sampling, proper sampling, so that at the end of it all, you make sure that your sample is representative. Okay. So it is assessment for learning. You assess to identify what you can learn better, not assessment of learning as we do it now.
Okay, and so in 2022, a child who is now in grade 3 will be in grade 6, and they'll be transitioning to the next level of learning. So, and you said that there'll be formative as well as summative assessment. So what will happen to that child grade 3 now?
Let me indicate that we don't need a summative assessment as it is now at the end of primary schooling. Because primary schooling is basically intended to give our learners foundational skills of literacy, numeracy, life skills, and all that. Now, if you look at the age of the child at that level, call it 12 or call it 14, when you give them a summative evaluation as we do now, it is basically for placement. So we do that to place them in specific schools, and then we declare that these ones have failed. And I think that is why the government, in its wisdom, decided to come up with 100% transition.
Right.
So that even if a learner gets 100, that learner has a potential. Give them a chance to go to the next level. I think you saw when you were releasing the KCSE results this year, you saw learners who got 190 in KCP, but had a chance to go secondary school. Many of them, a number of them did fairly well.
That's right.
So these are the things that we are trying to talk about. So at the end of primary schooling, we will not need summative evaluation that its duty simply to declare that somebody has failed or somebody is being placed. I think at that level, we should just have smooth transition. But we'll have an assessment to identify the skills country that we need to improve on as they move to the next stage.
Right, and just before it was decided that the rollout would happen this year, there were the concerns, and even now there are still concerns that there are children who are in grade 2 grade 3 last year. Now they're in grade 4. Had been piloted. There were children who were in grade 4 who had been piloted starting 2017. But now it has been said that they have to revert to the 844 system. What do you think is the disruption in their minds, in the mode of delivery, that is likely to affect them?
Incidentally, I would look at it differently. When we did the pilot last year, it was officially indicated that the pilot was going up to grade 2. However, there was children in 235 schools who were in grade 3 who went through the new system. Now, as I said earlier, don't forget that the change here is about the delivery. Now, in early years of learning, the basic skills that learners acquire remain the same. The basic content of what they learned did not change. So, what happened is that these learners only had the privilege of benefiting, being given more freedom to engage in activities, and as they engage in activities, you know, they get a little more creative. As they engage in activities, they discover things for themselves. So these learners actually have benefited. They have not lost at all. They have not lost anything at all. They are benefited by being given that freedom, but the content at that level remains the same. But does
it have a possibility of confusing them as they get back to the old system?
I think maybe I'll explain it again. You know, when you talk old, new, teaching is a continuum, as I said earlier. More lecture, activities on the far end, maybe then, of course, discussion and answer. You will find that even as people who engage in competency pedagogy, the lecture method still remains part of what they do. So even if you go to a class, you'll still find a teacher teaching, and then they engage the learners in activity. So it will not confuse them, because this is a continuum. They have just been engaging in more activity, in more play as they learn than the lecture method. Right. So they don't lose anything.
Right, and of course you can text us your questions and views on 22422, or you can tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku, at Willis Raburu. The hashtag to use is Debrek, as we continue to talk about the competency-based curriculum rollout. And the question I now want to focus on is in as far as the learning materials are concerned. I understand that today there's an event to distribute these certain books to the schools. And if you are a parent at a private school, how do you access these materials?
Incidentally, the materials that are being distributed or were already being distributed last year, there was a time the private schools got into engagement with the Ministry of Education when the ministry was giving some materials for free, so that they could also get these materials at the cost of production. And I think this was a directive that was given by His Excellency the President on the 5th of January when he was launching the distribution of books at Semester in Karen. He directed and the publishers to ensure that the private schools also benefit from the reduced price that now was taking place. Number two, don't forget that in every learning area, we approve 6 books or 6 learning materials. Now, this now, what the government has done is that out of these 6, they have selected one that is being given to them at the lowest price. So it means that even the private schools still have access to all the 6 materials. And even if the government buys one material for schools, it does not mean that the other materials are not being used as part of reference. So these materials are there. The private, incidentally, it happens that the private schools have even acquired more materials than the public schools. So they're fine.
Right, and the question I want to ask you now is that sometimes last year we were told that there was a report that indicated we were not ready for rollout. I don't know whether you're able to see that report, and what were the challenges that would have affected this rollout that now we appear to have quickly resolved.
Curriculum is looked at probably in 3 phases, but let me focus on 2. The first one is the technical content, that animal that we call the curriculum, where you have the basic education curriculum framework, where you have the designs, etc., etc. And so far, we have not had complaint about the designs. And even if there were, curriculum currently is conceived as a living thing. A living thing that these days across the world, you don't need to wait for the UNESCO's 5 years to review certain aspects of your curriculum. So if there were technical areas in the curriculum that we needed to improve on, and they are not major, it will not halt the rollout of the new curriculum. And you keep revising them and improving on them as you go along. Again, that is a trend across the world. You read literature and you find that is how curriculum is now currently conceived. Now the next stage is the materials. Once the designs are ready, then you hand them over to the publishers, the people who produce for us materials. And allow me to explain that in this country, even before we came to competence-based curriculum, we're already producing competency-based materials for Rwanda. If you go to Rwanda, you'll find that the publishers in Kenya control 80% of that market. They had gone through the process. The publishers in Kenya control about 100% of competency-based curriculum materials for South Sudan. Now, when we did our designs, which were internationally, looked at and seen to be good enough, we invited UNESCO through the IB, the International Bureau of Education, who, are the overall body in ensuring quality. They took our publishers through a training process of competency-based curriculum materials. Fortunately, our publishers were already even ahead because of what they had done in Rwanda. So, publishers then went ahead and produced materials. I would want to comment at that stage that these materials, and there was this time when there was a lot of hue and cry about our materials having errors. We went through all the materials that were posted on the social media. All of them, only one was a material that had been approved in Kenya. Some came from Ghana, some from Egypt, some from the US, some we don't even know where they came from. But people took photos of them and posted them as materials that children are going through in Kenya.
Sure.
Only one material, the one where there was an helicopter flying, was produced in Kenya and approved by KICD. And when we approved that material, technically, that material is right. But because it was giving different interpretations, decided, and in collaboration with the publisher, to modify it so that because those interpretations is what we don't want, although technically there was no problem. Now, once the materials are done, then you go to the next stage, the training of teachers. Now, we started training teachers at the end of 2017. And as I said, when you train teachers who are already trained in curriculum that is being implemented, you will not go and train them 100% and say, now you have been trained, wait, when the school opens, you go and start teaching. No. You give them the initial orientation, and then as they start implementing the new curriculum, the mentors who work with them, and they discuss and agree how to move forward. Now, this was being done by the curriculum support officers, who are the former zonal inspectors of schools. Now, this is how you deal with the training of teachers. So, another component that I know caused a bit of confusion, even now it will, started with the lower primary and ECD, what we call early years education. When we started, we were told, make sure you get it right before you move on. So we decided to put emphasis and concentrate on early years education before we move on to start training teachers of upper primary. As I told you, a number of teachers who teach in lower primary are not many. So if you walk to a school today, and maybe a school has 7 teachers, 2 of them deal with lower primary, 5 of them teach in upper primary, and you did a survey and asked them, are you trained for the new curriculum? Majority will say they are not. But we have not reached there yet. All there next year, as we move on to the next grades, we'll be training teachers gradually, because you cannot train all of them at the same time. So that had already been done. So if somebody went to conduct a survey, and now I'm coming back to your question, if somebody went to conduct a survey in a school, you find 7 teachers who've been trained on the competence-based curriculum, 50% of, if there are 7, a larger percentage will say they're not trained. You'll have about 20% who will say they are trained. So you come and say teachers are not trained, but you're not paying attention to the level at which the curriculum is being rolled out. You can imagine if you jumped and tried to train all the teachers, all the 300,000 teachers that we have in this country. Definitely it can't work like that. In fact, we'll be accused that we don't know what we are doing. So it is the level that we were concentrating on that gave the impression that the teachers are not ready. So now, so if you look at those 3 parameters, the curriculum, the materials, the teachers, you can now judge for yourself. All right, and so as you move on into 2019, the total rollout, and now next year there will be grade 4. What is the plan on training those levels as you carry on? Now the plan is, this year, as we roll out, there will still be some ongoing training for teachers in early years. Now, as we are doing this, we are going to start training teachers this year, and that will be led by Teacher Service Commission for upper primary. And even upper primary, because normally you have more teachers in upper primary than lower primary, you have to, and the head teachers will be asked to identify the teachers, because at that level teachers normally oscillate. But the teachers who teach more lessons, let's say in grade 4 and grade 5, and identify them for training, because even in upper primary, you cannot train all of them at a go. So we'll be identifying who do the grade 4, grade 5, they will be trained this year. The materials will be ready. So that as we roll out into grade 4 next year, again, they will have been given the initial training. But even then, that training will not end there. Training, even in the current system, that's why we have continuous professional development of teachers. System, there's always that training that teachers go for to improve on their skills. So training or human resource development will never end.
Right, and if we can have the last slide, just as we conclude this conversation, you will see that last week when the Cabinet Secretary was meeting with the county directors of education and also regional coordinators of education, she gave instructions to all of them saying that the CDEs, that is the county directors of education, if you can have that slide, will ensure that curriculum designs are being used, they are available and being used in schools. They'll also ensure availability of learning materials. Some of those materials are being distributed today. They'll also ensure that only approved books are in use in those, just to take care of the quality. They will also be responsible to organize training sessions for teachers, of course in consultation with other organs like the KICD, TSC, and also they will be supporting curriculum awareness on parents for specific schools that need to do that. Finally, they will report progress and gaps as there were several other instructions that were given by the ministry. But just as we wind up, the last question from me is, with all that, the confusion that was, and now you are busy to roll it out, and then what guarantee do you give that these children in these levels are will get quality education, and there will be no interruptions in terms of reverting or whatever?
I mean, you know, some are policies, but I think one thing that we have to appreciate, that the move to the competence-based curriculum was long overdue in this country. Because if you look at, we have a lot of TVET institutions that are being opened. They don't have enough students. Why? Yet we have so many learners who can benefit from them. It's because we needed to have a system that provides pathways for learners, that creates opportunity other than the narrow gap that they're going through now. So that by the time the school system, they will be actually competing to get into TVET institutions.
Right.
You know, if you go to a country like Canada, there are TVET institutions where people are waiting to join for over 2 years, because that is what they want to do. We need to have an embedded change of attitude for opportunities that exist in the country, for business and entrepreneurial skills, that even if you decide to become a musician or become a runner or just become an artist, then you have embedded in your skills, in your knowledge, the issue of business and entrepreneurial skills. So I think we are on course. What I would is those who have the knowledge, those who know what is supposed to happen in education, to support the process so that we get it right. Because we only have one country. And I don't think that there's any mistake in what we have done at all, because it is long overdue. Actually, if you look at the Minde report, you look at several reports that we have had through the various task forces. One thing they've always put emphasis on is pathways and expansion of technical skills. Another thing they put emphasis on is the reduction on emphasis of summative evaluation, so that we test learners as a holistic being. And as we finish, because I know you want to finish, I've always said, technically we talk of cognitive, affective and psychomotor. In simple words, I talk of the head, I talk of the heart, and the hands. What we are trying to say is that our education system has overemphasized from the head. We have forgotten the emotional intelligence, we have forgotten affective feelings, and we have forgotten the application of that knowledge. We are trying to add these two into, so that we have a holistic human
That's
being.
An important point to close the discussion on, and of course we'll continue to discuss more. You spoke about pathways, but of course it's still up there, so we'll try as we carry on the rollout to be trying to get information for the viewer. But now some few people are saying this in a minute, that as a grade 3 teacher I have a feeling that we are under-trained, and again the adopted curriculum for the hearing impaired children has not been distributed to schools, adapted rather. Neither the adapted books. Again, the ICs have not been adapted to suit the hearing impaired learners, and also do not have grade 3 content in it. Another one says, another one says that please, in grade 1 there are no books. In grade 2 and 3 they have Kiswahili and English. What happens to other learning areas like environment and what have you? Is he aware that This is saying that I know at least one candidate with. No, that's outside the topic. Someone says that, kindly, Dr. John, what happens if those CCD teachers who have advanced education up to degree level, because at the county level we have proxies who act on behalf of the governors and give, well, that's difficult for you to answer. But primarily, you can see the concern about
yes. And then the SNE. We have a lot of adaptation that has been going on the SNE learners, and I think those materials are in the process of being produced.
Okay.
For those who are saying that they only have certain books, I think that is why you are saying even today the distribution process is going on. And don't forget that this curriculum is going to be rolled, subsequently for the next 7 to 8 years. So it is not something that is ending today.
Right.
So let's give it a chance. All the materials are being distributed. And don't forget that there are those who are also buying materials from the bookshops, because these materials are there.
Okay.
So I think it is it is a combination of several factors that best, but the books that the government is buying are already being distributed, and that process is ongoing.
And where can parents access that list of approved books by KCD?
Oh, there's an orange book. It is in every, we normally distribute it. There's a new one that is being printed now. I think by the weekend we'll be having about 30,000 distributed for free across the country, to schools, to education officers, to bookshops.
Okay.
So, and we already have one that is outside there. Last year, we distributed about, we produced 30,000 free, and we just distribute for people to know which books are supposed to be there.
All right.
So that we also discourage them from buying books that are not approved. Then they come and accuse us for having books that are not
for the mistakes.
Good. Yes, thank you very much.
Dr. Julius John from the KICD, the Chief Executive Officer there, thank you so much for making time for us. Of course, this is an important conversation we continue to have even for the rest of the year as this rollout continues. So we take a short break on Daybreak, but when we return, we'll be having Sporty Monday with Willis Raburu and his team of analysts. Some of them are Arsenal supporters, others are Chelsea, I think, and yes, Shitara is Chelsea, and then Manchester United for Raburu, which is still number 6. So stay tuned to Daybreak.